Good afternoon and welcome to Delivering Application Performance at the Speed of Mind, a webinar tweet chat combo from healthsystemcio.com sponsored by NetApp. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. My name is Anthony Guerra and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Health System CIO, and I will be your moderator today. We are having a simultaneous tweet chat hosted by Kate Gamble, our Managing Editor and Director of Social Media. You can participate in a separate browser or on your phone by using the hashtag HSCIO chat, or you can simply view the tweet chat in the Media Viewer panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll also be leveraging the Q&A panel today. Use that to send in your questions. Leave the default set as all panelists. Just send them in as they occur to you, and we'll take them later in the program. And you can download the deck by using the URL on your screen. It's been sent out in the chat box, and it's at the bottom of our slides. Just so you see how we're going to spend our time today, we're going to go about 30-35 minutes with our main panel discussion featuring Austin Park, Interim CTO with LCMC Health, Juan Rodriguez, Director of Information Technology with Arundel Health System, and Joey Hobbs, Senior Manager of Strategic Alliances with NetApp. So without any further delay, we're going to jump right in. Austin, let's start with you. Can you give us an overview of your organization and role?
Well, yeah. My name is Austin Park. I'm the Interim CTO over at LCMC Health System in New Orleans, Louisiana. LCMC Health is composed of 5 hospitals in the Louisiana, New Orleans area, serving the community as a whole, including a Trauma 1 hospital with UMCNO, a children's hospital, and 3 additional community hospitals.
Very good. Thank you, Juan.
Yes, Juan Rodriguez. I'm the IT Director here at Arundel Medical Center. We're based out of Annapolis, Maryland. We service a region about 1.2 million people. Our main hospital has over 420 beds on a 50-acre campus. We're Maryland's 3rd busiest hospital and the 2nd largest inpatient admission from the Baltimore area. We also have about 70 outpatient locations.
Okay, very good. Joey?
Yeah, so Joey Hobbs. I run our alliance with Epic and work on a few other things here at NetApp, but NetApp's a, Fortune 500 large data management company. My background is I was a healthcare CIO, so I spent 17 years on the provider side with Community Health Network, working within one of their regions. So been at NetApp about 4 years and have enjoyed and been blessed to work with both Juan and Austin over the past couple years, so looking forward to today.
Very good. Thank you, Joey. All right, Juan, let's start with you. Talk about user expectations when it comes to application performance.
It's kind of an interesting question because the dynamics with respect to a user's expectation can easily be found out by your call center. What I mean by that is when you look at performance in general, the folks who actually are developing or managing the systems will notice performance issues way before the users will. So from a user perspective, by doing analytics out of your call center, you're able to collect information that will actually help you engineer, with respect to better solutions that work. And in doing so, will actually, as a byproduct, will improve application performance.
So Juan, you're saying monitor your call center to see what calls are coming in, but you're also saying there are ways to find out before people make complaints?
Absolutely. So basically, if you're not in tune why people are calling, you're going to miss the mark. Basically, people call in for help for various reasons, which you're kind of hoping eventually that you get an environment that people are mostly calling in about how do I do something. But 9 times out of 10, if you're having problems within your environment, you're going to find that out by the types of calls people are placing. You should be doing analytics with respect to your engineering team, looking to see why people call. That becomes the basis of what you start attacking. And basically from that, you'll basically actually take care of a large sweeping area of your infrastructure and in turn start delivering solutions that allow you to actually mitigate any application performance issues.
So basically, where there's smoke, there's fire, and you're looking for the smoke.
You got it.
Okay, very good. Austin, your thoughts?
I think when we started in the industry, terms like machine learning and kind of analytics, those were all pretty new. And I think these days, just to your point about where there's smoke, there's fire, being able to predict what's happening in the organization and kind of where people are most likely going to be complaining, and being able to take proactive steps is critical to having that as part of your IT process. So I agree with what Juan just said.
Well, Austin, how do you deal with the dynamic that sometimes when someone encounters a problem, they just get upset and they stop, but they don't call? I guess we assume that there's a percentage who will call, and that's how we figure out issues. What are your thoughts around that?
That's actually a pretty common problem. I think most people either assume that someone else is going to call, or by the time they call, there's a certain level of frustration. Obviously, from a service perspective, we want to have our service systems. For instance, at LCMC, we do use ServiceNow, and we want to be able to capture enough information that we can kind of predict what's going on in the environment as a whole. But what we found is that we've got to make more investments in tools that allow us to actually diagnose the system on our own, to be able to monitor and proactively kind of sense when some things are out of tune. So one of the things that we really spend a lot of time doing is tracking application performance. We can look at the app pulls on the various systems, and depending on what's going on, we can kind of get a sense for if there is an issue going on or not, and start digging into those problems even before people call in. I think when people have to call in mass numbers, we've already, as Juan pointed out, we've kind of lost the game a little bit at that point.
Yeah, very good. Joey, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I see this pretty common, from NetApp's perspective as a data management company. One of the places where we've put a pretty significant investment is what used to be like your auto support and your dial home. So we have something called Active IQ now, where we actually use analytics from the 30,000+ controllers that call home on a weekly basis, and we start to look for all these predictive things. If A plus B equals C, then let's look at all of the systems within the NetApp customer base that has A plus B, and we're able to solve like over 70% of problems before they ever happen. As a health system, you're looking at your key applications like Epic or Meditech or your different EHR vendors. But certainly you look at things like an interface engine, and there's a whole breadth of things you kind of look at. I know some of the things that both LCMC and Arundel have seen is, taking advantage of NetApp systems and lowering those exception reports and improving performance, not only on delivery and taking advantage of flash systems and hybrid systems when they're there, but also as they're taking, just normal software upgrades to their infrastructure, they're able to deliver better performance, which is pretty cool that you don't really see without most other customers having to actually upgrade hardware.
Joey, you were on the provider side, as you said. And from a non-technology, sort of plain English point of view, what do the users expect? At a simple level, they expect it to work, but what does that mean? And that's changed over time, right? It's changed over time as everyone's experience changes with technology. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think you've seen the systems, if you look at technology itself, how fast we've advanced. So, to the point before of everyone else is expecting you to call, the first thing in healthcare is they expect the system to be up, right? 24/7, we don't want downtimes, and we certainly don't want unexpected downtimes. And that's not performance, but reliability, which is incredibly important. The other thing that we really see is, physicians particularly, clinicians, when they click a button, they expect the system to work immediately. Now we've seen technologies like Flash certainly help performance to end users, but the minute a user clicks the system and it takes a little bit, they're counting 1 second, 2 seconds. They count the number of clicks they use. So any delay within the systems, becomes incredibly important.
Juan, what language do complaints about slowness take? I mean, what do you hear from the users, from the clinicians? Is it ridiculous? I mean, or is it reasonable? The different, and maybe you get a range. Maybe you get a range of the reasonable to the ridiculous. But just give me a little more there on the interaction with the users on what they expect.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting, and I do agree with the comment Joey just made with regards to the system being up, because most of your complaints, at least so far in my experience, hasn't been a situation of things are slow. I mean, and usually when you do get that, you're trying to find out where's that bottleneck, what's happening. It's the whole adage with regards to the light switch. If I flip the switch, I'm hoping the light should just come on. And it really is the idea that the system should be reliable enough that the system's up and it's working. Then the next thing really then comes from a standpoint, not necessarily discovered from a user standpoint, but part of that is the monitoring and the analytics that you need to have in place to understand the health of your entire infrastructure. I mean, it does not begin and end with the storage system, but it's all the components that come into play and making sure that your network is healthy. I mean, one of the things that we have as a constant measurement really is the idea from the moment that the workstation makes a request to the moment that it talks to the back end, and when that response is received back by the workstation. If you're not measuring that play with regards to the interaction of the user with the back-end system and making sure you're measuring that latency, when it comes to application performance, it's another area that you had an opportunity to discover something before users discover it, so that way you can be proactive. And in our case, for most of our users, it's definitely not an application performance scenario. It's really reliability and system uptime.
Austin, what are your thoughts around that? Do you hear it basically being an up or down discussion? It's either up or it's not, or do you get a lot of gray in between? It's not fast enough. If it's, do you hear that from time to time?
No, I think it's definitely not an up or down discussion anymore. I think users are becoming very savvy, and their expectations are evolving. You mentioned if the request is ridiculous, and I would say that what may have been a ridiculous performance request at one point is starting to become more and more reasonable. And here's part of the reason why. I think when we look at the clinical ecosystem as a whole, for instance, we place a lot of emphasis on making sure that our Epic system performs well, and we worry about the IOPS and do scaling and performance testing. But in reality, if we're able to have the cache database perform very well, but when we actually go out to an external system, for instance PACS, and pull an image in, and that takes a while, the perceived performance from the clinician is that it's slow. So we used to think that the radiology director asking for solid-state storage for short-term archive of PACS was just a ridiculous request. Now we're thinking that may be reasonable. In the same way, we thought of unstructured documents in OnBase, which are pulled in, being on relatively fast storage, being a ridiculous request as well. But today, we think differently about it because of the need for those systems to interface directly and work as one ecosystem, one clinical system that's performing well for the clinician.
Very good. Excellent. All right. Joey, let's start with you on this one. What are the barriers to superior application performance? So what are some of the reasons people could be seeing sort of substandard performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at it holistically, to Austin's point, the number one thing is kind of cost, right? So organizations typically have looked at, Flash is expensive, so how do I do this? And with a lot of different systems and health systems that are out there, that's because, we've got these silos within the organization. So my PAC system runs on one set of infrastructure and my EMR runs on another set of infrastructure. And there's all these different management tools, and it's just complex and difficult to manage. And So what we talk to customers about, and we actually have a very large health system in Texas who they put in an all-flash data center. They run flash from everything across because of a couple things. While they believe that running a PAC system or on base on flash may be more costly up front, the reality is spinning disk has more problems than flash. So from an error perception, it lasts longer. So you start to look at all the things within the systems, and they justify it as, less support costs to their end users, but also all the improved, performance. So as you're going to pull a radiology image, it's immediate, or Highland on base, or WebBlob, or these different things. So where NetApp's a little different from that is we provide that single operating system across the data center, which allows you to move workloads seamlessly. So Arundel, they use a combination of all flash systems as well as hybrid systems. So, they're able to keep all the, radiology images, 95% aren't looked at after 30 days. So they're, able to have a very high performance system that takes advantage of both. But it's really across the ecosystem. The challenges I see are the silos, and that's where we've had a lot of success by eliminating those silos and just making it easier and more cost-effective for health systems to take advantage of.
So, Joey, it sounds like what you're saying is it's a investment up front that pays off in the long term, and you need to take the long view of your costs, and then this makes sense. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple pieces. TCO models, I was actually reading some folks on Twitter the other day talking about, TCO models and how they're really hard to justify. What's the cost of a delayed image coming up? What's the cost of, all these other things from a performance perspective that are very hard to justify? And the reality is, a lot of applications, normal Epic customer runs somewhere between 200 and 1,000 different applications. And some of them are coded pretty poorly. Flash fixes that. We've had customers who have moved an application that was performing poorly onto an all-flash system, and the problems in the code go away because of the performance of the systems. So you no longer have to manage moving applications around and saying, okay, well, this one's tier 2, so it can be on a hybrid system. What is the cost of that to your organization and constantly managing systems? So, yeah, little bit more upfront. But we worked with a lot of health systems that have justified that cost because of the performance savings.
Very good. Austin, comments?
Well, I think, Joey makes a really good point. I mean, from a infrastructure perspective, if we could afford it, we would go to all flash. The benefits, the performance are, kind of not even a question. The concern is always around cost. I think that's why cloud-connected, flash storage is so important, because it opens a possibility for us to look at tiering and other strategies to control that cost while providing the optimal performance. So I think that's the direction we're headed. We just need to build architecture that allows us to manage the cost.
Juan?
Joy made a comment with respect to Arundel and the storage, or at least the stand that we actually purchased from NetApp, and he's 100% right. I think most people are not aware of making that investment in flash pays dividends. What I mean by that is, if you look at the measurement that I was talking about earlier, where we measured a round-trip time with regards to calling an application or the interaction with an application and the users, we went from 30 milliseconds relationship between the users and the back-end system to less than 1 millisecond. And the only thing that was changed was flash. The level of performance with regards to an application or a environment in which you may actually have poor programming, flash will actually, it would be a boost to that application. And then not even to mention that even if you actually have to tier your storage, tiering it with some common sense in the sense of fronting that with flash will actually allow you to even boost your performance with spinning disk, and that way you can tier your storage. In other words, sometimes you have to look at that cost, look at that total cost of ownership and the realization. And most of the time, you're not even realizing the additional benefits that you're going to gain through just making that technology change.
Yeah, and Juan, Joey talked about what are the costs of poorly performing systems. So I guess you've got hard ROI and then you've got soft ROI, and soft ROI could be a happy clinician that didn't have to sit there and wait for his PACS image to come back, correct?
Correct, absolutely. And that's the interesting thing, Again, from a back-end system, we've measured and we can see the before and after. We baselined our environment before we made the change and afterwards. The one thing is we've always had a very stable environment. The beauty of what we've done, not only from a storage perspective, but even the interaction with these systems, we also beefed up our backplane with respect to, or the backbone with respect to our data centers, and made sure that we took care of any bottlenecks within our infrastructure. By doing so, it's amazing with regards to performance. And that's primarily why we're not getting any calls as it relates to performance. Everything now is where are the other areas to attack? And a big benefit and the value add really was what we did on the storage front, to the point where it was interesting that we measured CPUs actually had to work harder because the data was getting back and forth from servers much faster. And it was an interesting measurement that we noticed.
Very good.
Yeah, and Anthony, I want to touch just real quick on something what Austin discussed. At HIMSS this year, I did not have a conversation with a customer that didn't somewhat discuss public cloud or cloud infrastructure. And I think Austin's spot on with that. If you look at, we all know technology changes very quickly. It's been, a couple years now that flash has become mainstream. And now if you're just providing flash, that's great, but everyone does it, right? So what we see most customers looking at is, okay, it's about this cloud-connected flash. It's how can I tier? So I mentioned this health system in Texas. They're actually using our technology to automatically tier this cold data to a cloud provider. That's their whole long-term strategy. My two tiers are public cloud and flash. We have organizations today that we're working with now that are looking for their entire DR to be public cloud and using ONTAP, NetApp's data management system, to help manage their on-premise data center and using something like Azure as their DR system. And so, I look at systems within the market. Why would I invest in something that's not going to directly work with public cloud and seamlessly work with public cloud? And NetApp's been a leader in this. When I started almost 4 years ago, our system's already connected with public cloud. So imagine the innovation that we've put into these systems over the past 4 years. But I really see that's the direction that customers are going is, if I've got this DR solution, and I'll, if they'd like to, LCMC and Arundel kind of talk about what their DR scenarios look like. But a lot of customers look at DR as my data's in another place. I don't have enough compute to run. I can't support all my users. And that's not true DR if I have a disaster. Maybe my data center is very close by. What I see customers looking at now is saying, if I can replicate to Azure and I can just buy the compute when I need it if there was a disaster, you've increased your resiliency to your organization tenfold over what you had before. Because not only can you do it at a lower cost, significantly upfront, you've also got geographical separation that you may not have had before. So, the cloud-connected flash systems, I think, are the biggest, most important thing that customers are looking at based on, a lot of different conversations we had at HIMSS this year.
Juan, I think Joey mentioned your organization. Did you want to touch on anything there?
Yeah, I guess twofold. With respect to our DR infrastructure, we do have a co-location, and basically we have 2 10-gig pipes between our 2 locations. So one of the things I will say, when you start bringing in the cloud, what most people don't measure and they fail to measure is latency. Most organizations have the benefit with regards to centralized data centers, and basically some of them get to deal with less than 1 millisecond, if not 5 millisecond connections to their data. When you move it out to the cloud, whether it's Azure or whomever you choose to use, you have to worry about that latency. All the gains you'd have with Flash would be lost in the sense of that latency connection. And when you're in the midst of a DR and you haven't calculated that, you're going to be unpleasantly surprised. So it's something that you have to take into consideration. So when we decided to look at it from a DR standpoint, the first thing, that's a significant investment in itself. So if you can't make use of that system in the sense of an active data center scenario, you're basically buying a lot of insurance and not getting much use out of it. But if you can make it active, and you also are spreading your footprint so that way you're mitigating risk, that to me is where you start seeing return on investment.
Very good. Excellent. All right, Austin, let's go to you on this one. What are some solutions to improving application performance? Obviously, we've been touching on them. What specifically are you doing in your shop to increase user satisfaction in this area?
Well, I think one of the things that we are starting to take advantage of is the amount of insight and information that's coming back from the systems in terms of how people use different workloads. We have a finite amount of infrastructure, so for us to be able to repurpose or kind of reassign resources to systems that people are using more at different times, and then being able to constantly adjust the environment to that allows us to dramatically improve application performance. So the key here is, are the systems flexible enough for us to dynamically reassign them? If you think back just to a decade ago, and that was never something that we would even contemplate, the sheer bureaucracy of the change control process and being able to make that kind of dynamic shift in resource assignment wouldn't allow us to do it. But today we do. So we're able to be cost effective and assign resources where it's needed to improve that application performance.
Very good, Juan.
Yes, so with regards to our environment, again, we've been very fortunate within the past year of honestly upgrading and refreshing our infrastructure. And part of that has been the idea of understanding our environment, making sure that we understand and have measured our metrics, so that way as we move forward with flash storage, increasing our network throughput, and understanding with respect to how every component within our whole ecosystem is constructed, from the workstation working back to the LAN with regards to its performance, to the WAN with regards to its performance, and within the data center to make sure that we get rid of all the bottlenecks. That in itself has assisted in making sure that we have the resiliency and the performance that meet or exceed users' expectations.
All right. Very good, Juan. Let's stick with you here. Have you been able to reduce application deployment times or exception reports, and how?
Yeah, for the most part, I think as we move forward to refreshing our environment, and I think part of that is, especially from a NetApp standpoint, we looked at the value add. When we sat down and we started looking at changing out our backend storage, one of the things that came really clear is that a lot of the players had similar solutions. So the truth is that what made each one different was what was that value add, what did they bring to the table. A good example from a NetApp standpoint, they had in-house, they had a good understanding of the Epic system with respect to how that interplayed with storage. And we were able to leverage their talents with respect to our partner that we worked with, Plan B Technologies, to bring in-house Epic Environment on Demand, which is a utility that actually allowed us to be able to deploy, manage, and basically maintain the Epic environment. Things that took us up to 7 days now only takes 4 hours. So, I mean, the return on engineers' times, which then played out in support for our user population, is tremendous.
Joey, you want to talk a little bit about that differentiating factor? Juan mentioned the deep Epic knowledge of that environment. Just you want to go into what that means and what what that means for NetApp and its customers?
Yeah, so I certainly see, I mean, that's a big difference from a NetApp perspective. So the engineer that I work with directly was the guy who was actually deploying Epic on NetApp across the country. So he spent, multiple years in professional services and has joined me supporting customers. And where I think that gives us significant value to NetApp and then ultimately out of the customers is we understand Epic. We meet with them regularly. We understand what the challenges are. So, the backups and the refreshes of the database, particularly before Flash, because Flash has solved some of the challenges, was just the ability to back up and manage these databases. You have to do it within a certain amount of time. You have to keep so many copies. And NetApp being a leading data management company for 25 years, this really fell right in our wheelhouse. And so NetApp's made the investment both into a healthcare team. So I'm part of a team that supports healthcare across the Americas, but also specifically for Epic. So we spend a lot of time with our customers saying, what are the challenges you're having? So, part of the public cloud and DR, I mean, that we actively are working on testing with several customers around what that looks like. We have tools like analytic tools that can look deeper across the system where we've built dashboards specifically for Epic customers that are additive to what you would see from System Pulse. So our goal is not to, compete with tools that are already there. We just want to work with our customers to make it a little bit better and look for things. So I think that value of partnership that Juan mentioned and leveraging the investment that NetApp made is something most customers certainly take advantage of.
Austin, the question on the screen, have you been able to reduce application deployment times or exception reports, and how?
I think that's an ongoing, endeavor in IT when we're actually looking at how we do that. For the most part, I think the key here is to try and eliminate, type 1 errors, hardware issues, and I think storage provisioning has always been a bit of a, one of those things that always cause some issue. I think working with NetApp, one of the things that we're very happy about is the consistency and ease in which we can actually provision resources as needed, and how we're able to kind of recover when we need. The thin provisioning capability, of course, is something that we take advantage of significantly. And I think given the performance over, having the confidence that we've got enough performance headroom allows us to use the systems in a very flexible way that allows us to deploy without having to wait on storage provisioning resources. So that's been a key for us.
Storage provisioning. Juan, you want to touch on that a little bit? Storage provisioning.
Well, actually, as you look at the storage in general and how much it's matured over time, it's become more and more an interplay with regards to the rest of your environment. And what I mean by that is, again, two things. One is the value adds that you get with regards to the investment that your storage provider puts into their applications and utilities is a big plus, because what that allows you to do is to be able to provision storage, as I put it, on a demand basis, in the sense that you can proactively look at a system, watch how it's trending, and proactively the system itself is monitoring that. And if you configure it correctly, it is self-provisioning. And as it's going through that process, it's also able then to notify you with regards to its rate of consumption. So that way you're no longer behind the 8 ball. You're always basically being able to address a problem before the problem even occurs, which is, honestly, that's another value add as you refresh your hardware and your environment. You start gaining these big pluses with regards to your engineering department.
Very good. I just want to remind everyone in the audience that we are open to taking your questions. So if you got anything you want to get in front of any of the speakers, please go ahead and send it in the Q&A box, and we will take a look at it. Joey, anything else you want to say about cloud-connected flash and its role in improving performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've touched on cloud. I do want to touch on one thing, you know, on the last part, is around, you know, we look at these infrastructures. I mean, I think one of the things that's incredibly cool that NetApp does different is the performance increases from software upgrades. So, I mean, LCMC, correct me if I'm wrong, Austin, they've been a NetApp customer for 3+ years now, and they're still using that same flash hardware. Now they will be upgrading controllers over probably the next 12 to 24 months, but they've gotten consistent 20 to 40% increases in performance. So they're reducing latency within their systems that are running their Epic EMR with only taking a software upgrade. And you really don't see that in the market. It's, you know, if you talk to your storage admins or people running your infrastructure, it's, hey, we need better performance, what do we do? The answer is always buy better hardware. And so I think that's very different in being able to deliver for the panelists and the attendees on the line. I mean, everybody knows that you're constantly taking required performance increases with updates to software. That's just, you know, we're including new functionality. Things that are there in the systems just require more performance. And so when your storage infrastructure is able to support that at the same scale or quicker than what the requirements are, you know, your investment's being protected for a long time. So I think that's something that, you know, folks should keep in mind is, you know, what's that path look like? You know, everyone's doing free controller upgrades and those things. Honestly, a lot of NetApp customers take advantage of our credit program. We had originally come out with a free controller upgrade like a lot of the flash providers in the market, and we noticed most of our customers weren't taking the controller or didn't need to because the performance just kept getting better year after year. So we shifted to a credit program that allows you to either upgrade your controller or maybe you want to buy a cloud license or, you know, some other things that are out there. So we constantly look at that and adjust to what we're seeing in the market, and you know, the performance and portfolio is certainly there to support that.
Austin, anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate, we have been so impressed and so grateful for the performance increases from the software upgrades on our systems. Joey mentioned getting 20 to 40% consistent performance increases, but I think what's even more important is the kind of impact to the users. So we can measure the performance increase in the storage, but one of the things we track is real-time exceptions in Epic. And we always try to make sure that stays below 1.3%. That's those are what the clinicians would perceive as something that's slower or something that didn't happen the way it should. And we were starting to kind of creep up almost to 1.3%. We took a controller software upgrade, and that dropped to about 0.7, 0.8. And you know, and that's an immediate notice for the user community to notice that the system is performing better. So that was a dramatic increase for us.
Very good. All right. Interesting question, I think, here. When it comes to application performance, do you think there are many health systems out there who are suffering from lackluster results? They don't even realize they have a problem, that their situation can be improved. Juan, do you think people just get used to what they have and don't realize that it can and should be better, or do you think users don't let IT get away with that?
No, I at least I can speak to my experience. I do think people get used to what they have. You know, it's the same old, same old. Unless you make that situation worse, they really don't realize it. It's actually when what I've noticed is when you improve upon it, and it's similar to Austin when he was speaking about the performance improvement through just software updates. It was the same thing that we did here, but in our case, we switched out the entire SAN, and we saw significant improvements. And what I was surprised about, again, the folks who manage the back end with regards to the EMR, the developers, they noticed it immediately because what was taking them, like I said, days or hours, just dropped down to either from days to hours, from hours to sub minutes. From a user standpoint, they had performance improvements, but it wasn't so, things weren't so bad that they were going to notice it, but we noticed it from the back end standpoint. So it's always one of those things. If you got so-so performance and you make it worse, your users notice. If you got so-so and you improve upon it, the truth of it is they're just going about their days. But the realization was it wasn't a scenario that, oh my God, this system now is preemptively thinking what I want. We haven't gotten to that stage yet. But the one thing that we know is that we've improved upon it, and we've provided them a more resilient environment. And in the long run, it's those, when you get to radiology, things of that nature like PACS, where people have seen the differences with imaging and things of that nature, and that improvement is really where you get a lot of your feedback.
Very good. Austin?
I have a slightly different perspective on that. I think people are used to things improving over time, just in their personal lives, performance getting better, getting new phones and what have you. We've actually taken a lot of data in this space, looking at performance, measuring response times, simply because people are complaining all the time that performance has dropped off. And what we find is that performance hasn't dropped off. It's the same. But if it stays the same over time, people get accustomed to it and they believe it's slower. So we're in the situation where we have to constantly improve performance just to keep up with their expectations. And I think that's kind of an interesting scenario that we're in now.
Mm-hmm. Joey?
Yeah, no, I mean, I obviously agree with both, and that you're constantly trying to continue the performance increases that are there. LCMC, when they went live, doctors thought the system was broke because things were going so fast, and that's when the EMR is happening. But the other thing you can look at from the systems is, what about these large data reports? When you look at Clarity and Cohedo, I mean, we have organizations that are using more real-time analytics they're able to provide to clinicians, because a report that was taking 4 or 5 hours they were having to run overnight, they're now doing it in 20 or 30 minutes. So when the clinician comes in the morning, here's the report of all the patients who are have a higher likelihood of sepsis or whatever that might be. So, the performance increases from a normal day-to-day application perspective are certainly one thing, but the other thing that I think we continue to see is how this technology can actually transform patient care. And a lot of that's, sure, the queries and the data scientists and all these things that have to be there. But we're starting to see a lot of our customers take advantage of this and really using these analytics in a more real-time feature, which is important, right? Waiting overnight to hope to have it the next morning versus having it within an hour. The patients all take advantage, and the overall population of our health becomes better because of it.
Okay, very good. Joey, question for you. What resiliency does NetApp offer compared to their competitors, specifically IBM Flash? Yeah,
I mean, I don't want to talk necessarily about any other competitors. What I can say is customers that are running NetApp and taking advantage of our latest systems, we put a significant amount of value and investment into R&D, not only in on-premise Flash systems, but cloud and HCI products. So we have stated reports of, 6.5 nines of, IDC did, I think they looked at like 30 or 40,000 controllers across the market and look at uptime. So, when you look at those kind of percentages, you're talking a couple seconds a year. Certainly there's best practices that we work towards. We put in a lot of pre-work on, defined architectures and what those should look like. So, certainly you can ask the couple customers that are on the phone their experience with NetApp resiliency, and I think you'll hear that it's, very, very strong partnerships and strongly supported systems.
All right, very good. This is one of my favorite features, Ask a Co-Panelist. So, Joey, I'd like to start with you, give you an opportunity to ask Juan and or Austin a question.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start with a question for Juan, and I think maybe we touch on the last question that came from the crowd. As you migrated your systems to a NetApp environment, what's the resiliency and support and partnership look like for you?
I mean, I think
the biggest
met
expectations, been above? Sorry, just to going in thinking it was going to be one way, what's the outcome been?
I mean, for me, I've been a long time NetApp customer in different locations. When I came here a year ago, they had a different solution, and it was also a very, a solution that was showing its age. Now, I will say, with respect to NetApp, the one thing that they offer from a resiliency standpoint is basically as you work with NetApp, you work with your vendors. As long as you architect the system correctly with regards to multiple heads, multiple nodes, you'll find that you can basically be in an environment where you have zero downtime as it relates to your storage system. You really have the ability to maintain, upgrade, and run an environment that can run 24/7. And with respect to proactively notifying you with regards to issues, concerns, the system is constantly monitoring itself. A great support structure through NetApp with regards to having engineers that were calling you and say, hey, we've got a notice from your SAN. You may not be aware of it. You need to do X, Y, and Z. And they work with you. It has been a wonderful partnership with NetApp.
Same question for Austin, or?
Yeah, sure.
We're fortunate to have an environment that actually, we were able to start fresh with NetApp. It's, when we built out the Epic environment, and as Joey mentioned, when we first went live with the environment, they were coming from a very old, antiquated IBM storage system, and the performance was so fast, some of the doctors actually thought that there was something wrong with the system. But we were able to design out a very robust active HA system with full DR. And I think one of the reasons we were able to do that is the flexibility of the system as a whole. The architecture allowed us to kind of have that kind of resiliency built in without adding a lot of additional costs, since the environment is pretty much all inclusive. It was cost effective for us to do it as well. So it's been an extremely resilient system. Since we went live almost 4 years ago, we have not had a single unplanned downtime as a result of the storage system. And we had 2 instances of downtime in a 12-month period before we went live with NetApp. So it's been an excellent partnership.
Very good. Austin, you have a question for either of your co-panelists?
I guess, either for Joey or for Juan, we are spending a lot of cycles at LCMC looking at the next architecture for our infrastructure overall, leveraging cloud resources. We're trying to make sure that we have a future-ready architecture that's cost-effective and allows us to take advantage of on-demand resources. As Joey mentioned, we are actively moving our DR environments of Epic out to Azure Cloud right now, working with some of the NetApp technologies that are available. We've also started moving PACS systems out to the cloud. And I'm just wondering what your experience or what you're seeing in the marketplace with other hospital systems, kind of in terms of what their plans are leveraging cloud resources.
Juan, you want to jump in first?
Sure. I mean, for us, we definitely leverage cloud solutions. And the truth is, we take a position of, everything you have with respect to your arsenal as it relates to technology is picking the right tool for the right job. So with respect to cloud services or even cloud solutions from an infrastructure standpoint, we take into consideration all aspects with regards to why we're doing it, what benefits we're going to get, resiliency with regards to the solution itself, and then we also manage latency with regards to ensuring the performance that we'll get from the solution itself. But the key thing is, cloud is not the answer for everything, and everything shouldn't go into the cloud. It's actually going through the job of architecting the right solution and picking the right tool for the job.
Joey?
Yeah, I mean, that's spot on. I mean, the things that LCMC and Austin, you guys are looking at are a lot of what I see across the field. you get into these TCO models. Is cloud cheap or is it not? I mean, most would say that it's not. Depending, particularly in a production environment, and especially if you look to lift and shift. I mean, the reality is cloud requires different architecture. It requires significant investigation and building around security. And particularly in healthcare, a lot of the market and applications and infrastructure aren't written in a cloud-native format. So where I see most customers looking to invest is in this DR scenario where I don't need to have enough compute to run my 10,000 users. I need enough compute to replicate, and I need to make sure my database is out there and that I've got this infrastructure. And if something, unfortunately goes bad, now I can spin up that environment and run it. So I see customers looking at it from an agility perspective. Candidly, I have some customers that I work with that are looking, okay, what if I look to run maybe an active system within the same data center to provide against, obviously not the data center going down, but just things within the systems. And then I use the cloud as a quote, third site. I think what we're going to see is very different organizations take advantage of what this is. Some customers still certainly are, cloud is, I'm going to have someone else host my application, Office 365, things you would see of that nature. But I think when you look at core EMR, packs back up to the cloud, whether that's a public cloud or private cloud, are all things customers are looking at, because it's not about an initial, okay, I'm going to save X in a TCO. It's about what the agility provides to the organization. How can I do things quicker? How can I provide better guaranteed uptime? How can I make sure that our patients and our record is safe if something should happen? Building a brand new data center, while makes sense a lot of times still for production, because, Juan talked about all the requirements from a latency perspective are certainly very important. I see a lot less customers building a second data center. Maybe they're doing a colo, but a lot of them are really, really taking a hard look into what, Azure, Amazon, GCP, and these public cloud providers provide.
Very good. Only a few minutes left, but I want to get to Juan. Juan, did you have a question for either or both of your co-panelists?
Sure. I was just wondering from Austin and Joey's perspective, what do you see as the next big thing with regards to improving application performance?
Joey, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, so I'll start. I think what we'll start to see as performance in systems continue to improve. I mean, the reality is in healthcare, we have technology today that you couldn't even take advantage of from a performance perspective. So I think we'll start to see more things like machine learning and analytics within the systems. I talked about the active IQ and what NetApp's doing from analyzing these systems across the board to help ensuring uptime and things of that nature. I think we'll see more real-time analytics of back-end systems to ensure that you're providing the best performance you can over time. I also think you'll see more tools that'll come out that'll help you find problems quicker. So one of the things, also mentioned that they run ServiceNow. We have an analytic tool that ties right into ServiceNow. We have organizations that say they cut their support ticket time from 2.5 hours down to 15 minutes because they're very quickly able to tie these things in. I really think that's the next generation of what we're going to see to improve performance.
Austin?
I think I share that sentiment. I think from a performance standpoint, the raw speeds when we're talking about read and write speeds are going to get to a point where it's going to, it's going to be so fast, it'll be saturated. I think the next performance increase will come in the tools that we have for automated tuning of the system to being able to precisely pinpoint trouble areas and to be able to leverage machine learning to be able to give us guidance and how to address issues very quickly.
Excellent. Well, that is about all we had time for today. Really great conversation on a very important topic. When you close out your WebEx window, you'll be taken to a post-event survey. If you could take a moment to answer that, we'd appreciate it. Regarding continuing education, those of you who hold the CHIME CHCIO certification, you get 1 CEU for attending our event, so let CHIME know you were here, and if you've asked us to do so, we will. You'll receive an email when the archive recording of this event has been posted to our YouTube channel. If you'd like us to produce a webinar on the topic of your choice, you can visit our website and reach out to Nancy Wilcox from our team. And you could go to our site to view our upcoming schedule. So with that, I want to thank Austin Park, Juan Rodriguez, and my very good friend Joey Hobbs. I want to thank NetApp for sponsoring today, and I want to thank you, our attendees, for continuing to come to our events. And with that, everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you.